Okay, this is month 1. In your packet you have I gave all the directions. You're going to just need 2 pages of those directions. You're going to need the general direction page, and you're going to need your page 1, which is talking about the black one for this month. Those are the only 2 pages you'll need out of all of those. We're going to start off this month making half square triangles and hourglass blocks. I want to first start off with how we are going to construct the half square triangles. First off, you're going to cut your fabrics like it says in these directions. Pretty self-explanatory. We are going to need 4-inch squares to construct our half square triangles. And in the way we are going to make our 4-inch squares is with your 8.5 by 23-inch piece of fabric, or excuse me, 21 piece of fabric, 8.5 by 21 piece fabric. We're going to construct a grid. In the directions, we are going to construct a grid looking like this, and I will show you how to do that. You need to make a grid 2 by 5 on your fabric. And I'm going to show you how I did that on a piece of paper, and then we'll go through it on a piece of fabric. So we're doing a grid of 10 4-inch squares. What you need to do is take your piece of fabric. You need a good marking pencil or pen. I showed you how to use it with the gel pen. You just have to be careful not to iron it off, but you want a good marking pen. And what you need to do is start off with a right angle to start your marking. So what I did was, with a straight edge ruler, on the end I made an 1/8 of an inch off the end of the fabric. I made a mark straight edge about an 1/8 of an inch off. Then I turned it. With that mark up there, again, I wanted to leave about an 1/8 of an inch off. I wanted to make sure that's a right angle, and I drew another line down. Then what I did, every 4 inches, so on my ruler, my 4-inch mark here, I lined it up and I drew a line. Move it over another 4 inches, drew a line, etc., etc., etc. Then I turned it. I already made that one line here. 4 inches from that, I draw my line, and another 4 inches, I drew another line. This is paper, it was really tight, but with your fabric you'll have enough room on either side, about a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so I'm back. Now you should have 10 squares, a 2 by 5 inch grid. Once you have your grid of 2 by 5, you're going to do the diagonal, and I'll show you how to do that. At the top left, you're going to line up a ruler, and you're going to measure from this point to this point. You're going to draw a line. Do it again here, and again here. Then you're going to flip it here, here, and here. Again, your directions have that right there. When you're done, you're going to do this on the red check fabric, and you're going to do it on your green check fabric. If you do it on the back of your black, you won't see it very well. So when you're done, it should look like this. Then what you're going to do is you're going to sew on either side of the line that you drew. If you look at my paper template, you're going to start at the top left corner. You're going to sew. You're not going to sew on the line. You're going to sew with your 1/4 inch foot on one side of that, on both sides, but you're going to start out on one side of the line, like I did here. And you're going to sew you're going to sew this way, you're going to pivot this way, pivot this way, pivot this way, this way. Then you're going to pivot again, and you're going to go on the opposite side. Now, as you're sewing, it doesn't matter which side of the line you go on, because you'll see when you get going that it can be either way. But as you go back around, you'll just obviously go on the opposite side. You're going to pivot each time, go all the way around. You'll end up back there. You'll end up looking like this. You'll have your lines all the way around. You're only doing the diagonal. You're not doing any along the right edges. When you're done with that, and you're going to want to pin it before you start stitching because it'll move on you. When you're done with that, you're going to cut on all of the lines that you drew. The side lines. Your sewing didn't have to be extremely accurate. I mean, granted, you want your lines that you drew to be fairly accurate, but these are going to be 4-inch squares. We're going to trim them down to 3.5 inch, so it's not absolutely necessary to have everything perfect, and you'll see why. So I just cut around. I need a new blade. And now I'm going to cut on the solid lines in the middle. And then you're going to take each one and you're going to cut down the center, and then you're going to cut on that solid line between on each one of these. And what you end up with is your half square triangles. You'll end up, you're going to make 2 of the reds and 2 of the greens. You'll end up with 40 each of the reds and 40 each of the greens. Then, after you have all those cut, you're going to press all of your triangles away from the black toward the red, or away from the black and toward the green. It should look like that. Okay, now we're going to trim these down from the 4-inch square to a 3.5 inch square. And the way we're going to do that is I would recommend using the tool, the Tucker trimmer. This tool, if you look at it, has your whole numbers, and then it's got the half numbers. It's got a whole circle and a half circle. It's got the diagonals. If we're going to cut a 3.5 inch square, I know I need to have the half circle in my right hand. If I were to hold it, the half circle is in my top right hand corner, because I want my finished block to be a 3.5 inch square. If you were going to use a whole number, like a 4-inch square, then you would turn it and have the whole number, or the whole circle, in your top right corner of the ruler to use it. But we're going to use it for the 3.5 inch, because that's what we want to cut, the finished cut. So the way I use it is I take my triangle, or excuse me, take my square, and I'm going to line it up to the 3.5, and then there's the diagonal. I'm going to line it up so the diagonal is on there, and I'm going to trim. Get the paper out of the way. And then I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to trim it again. Now that I know, what did I do? Did I do that right? So then you have this trim to 3.5 inch. Let me do that again. The green one. Again, the 3.5 inch. I do it with my diagonal here. My diagonal lined up. And I'm going to trim. I'm going to bump you here. Do it again. I know that this is square, so I can line that up perfectly. My diagonal's there, and the tips get trimmed off. So you have a perfect 3.5 inch. So you're going to do that to all 80 of your half square triangles. 40 of those, there'll be 40 of each, 40 of the red and 40 of the green. You need to set aside 20 of each color for next month's blocks. So this month you're going to work with 20 of each color. So we're all set with the half square triangles. Now I'm going to show you how to do the hourglass block. Again, you're going to begin with your green packed leaves and your black vine and your red. You're going to have to cut an 8.5 inch by 23 inch, a 10 by 23 inch rectangle. And you're going to do a grid again, 2 by 5, a 2 by 5 grid like we did with the first one. Only this time you're going to make it with 4.5 inch squares. So when you do your measuring, you're going to do 4.5 inches. Same setup. So you're going to go ahead and sew it around, and you're going to cut those, and you'll end up with half square triangles of your red and packed leaves and your red and your black. These will be 4.5 inch. Now with these, you're going to press the seam open, like I did here, but you're not going to trim them. What you're going to do after you have all of those trimmed and pressed open, you're going to have one of your red and green packed leaf, and you're going to have one with your black vine. And you're going to lay them together, right sides together, with the red being on the opposite side, if you see that. And you're going to lay the diagonal together. You're going to nest those together. And nesting means they've got to be, matched up. I always take my finger and match it up. If you see, you want it to be matched. And then you can pin it to keep it together. And what you're going to do is now you're going to draw a diagonal line the opposite of the sewn line. And you can use a straight edge and just draw a line in the middle, or we have this tool that we use. And as you can see, I drew a line on either side of it and down in the middle. And what you're going to do with this one is you're going to sew on either side of the center line, like we did with the first one. You're going to sew down either side, and then you're going to cut on the middle line. And that's how you end up with your hourglass block. And now we're going to trim this down. And what you're going to do is you're going to press this seam open as well. You're going to get that tucker trimmer. And again, we want it to be a 3.5 inch finished block. So I've got my 3.5 inch, and we're going to use the intersection of the X here. I'm going to line it up. You can see my 3.5 and my diagonal here. And I'm going to trim. And then I'm going to take it. Make sure you have a good blade. My blade is terrible. And I'm going to line it up. It's right angle here. The center is right on the sewing line, and I'm going to trim. And you've got that perfectly trimmed off. Your point should be exactly in the middle there. And it's pressed open. And with this, you're going to make 80 of these. You'll have 2 sets of 40. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take and you're going to sew 2 of these together, right sides together, and you're going to sew right down the middle here. And you're going to press those seams open. You need to make 40 of those. The other 20 of those, you're going to make 40 sets of these. 20 of those sets you're going to set aside for next month. So you'll need 20 for today or for this block. What you're going to do is, with those sets then, is you're going to take your half square triangles blocks, your half square triangle blocks, and you're going to sew a red to one side and a green to the other. And that again is in your instructions on the bottom here. You're going to make 20 sets of those. So it'll look like this. Your 2 hourglass and your half square triangles. You want to be very careful about the orientation of your block when you sew them together, because it's very easy to get them turned around. So maybe make one and then keep it by your sewing machine so that you know how you need to line them up. And you'll end up with 20 of those. So that's what you need to have done this month. And the last thing is, when you are done sewing those 2 seams, you want to press them away from the center. So your center seam is pressed open, but this is pressed out that way. And you are all done.